yesterday, Yasmin read the paragraph, no? And today we are going to discuss it. And the paragraph is, this opens the way for other explanations. So shall I start?
Yes.
Okay. So the one that about more than a page, what Yasmin read yesterday was, this opens the way for other explanations. So before I just briefly tell you what he said in the previous para. He says that when we look at the physical world, we see that there is law, that there is fixity of laws. The physical world obeys laws very clearly. Okay. At the same time, he says that we see that there is an element of chance. Okay. We can give so many examples. The mango tree which gives mangoes, all the mangoes are not the same. Their size differs, their color also may slightly differ, their shape may differ. So there is an element of chance. Okay, you don't know what is going to produce. Or take a cat, it is pregnant, it's going to give 5 or 6 kittens. You don't know what color they will be. There's a chance, and each of these 5 will be different. But they need not be different also. Look at what nature does. It produces twins. It produces triplets. It produces quadruplets. There is a famous case in South America where 7 children were born. Human beings, huh? So this is the element of chance. Okay. So both is there. There is fixity of law and there is the freedom of chance. Both are there. So he examines the first case about the fixity of law. Okay. That's what the scientists say. Everything is fixed and laws are there, causality. But then you can't explain chance. How is freedom coming into something which is absolutely rigid? So he says we'll look at the other case. Let us suppose that consciousness, okay, consciousness is the main factor and force is a consequence of consciousness. He says let's look at that hypothesis. Okay, so that's what we are going to read today. So he says this opens the way for other explanation. I'm reading the paragraph now. Okay, this opens the way for other explanations which make consciousness the creator of the world out of an apparent original inconscience. Apparent inconscience, original matter existed at one time, and out of that life came out and the mind came out. So there is consciousness which is coming out. But consciousness coming out of inconscience, it's a mystery. So he said, let's look at that and see whether it can make some sense out of it. Which makes consciousness the creator of the world out of an apparent original inconscience. A mind, a will, seems to have imagined and organized the universe. Not if you are a scientist, but if you are a slightly more flexible mind, you will say that, oh, there is a conscious being maybe which is producing all this. Because if a conscious being is not there, how is consciousness coming out? So this is a theory, a hypothesis that he's saying we'll examine. A mind, a will, but mind with an M cap and will with a W cap. Gitanjali, we're missing you for a long time. Welcome back.
Thank you, Rangada. I was traveling.
Okay. So, a mind. Pardon?
No, I go through the recordings though.
Acha, okay. Oh, right, okay. So this opens the way for other explanations. A mind and will seem to have imagined and organized the universe. So first of all, note the word imagined. It plans. It's a blueprint. And organized the universe. But it has veiled itself behind its creation. Okay? It has veiled itself. You don't see. Okay? Just as I said yesterday, if you go to an exhibition hall, you see the paintings. They are absolutely a fact. You can't deny that. The world is there. The world, you can't deny. There are stones and there are trees and birds. You can't deny. But where is the creator? Just as in an exhibition hall, the painter, the artist may be there, may not be there. But his creations you see. So that's what Sarabde is saying here. Okay. So, but has veiled itself behind its creation. Its first erection has been the screen of an inconscient energy and material form of substance. So this is the theory I'm giving you. Accept it if you want. Okay, that's his attitude. Then he's saying an inconscient energy and material form of substance. Material form of substance. Very interesting phrase. Material form of substance. In other words, substance need not be material form. Okay, it can be subtle form also. But the subtle, at the lowest level, it is material form. At once a disguise of its presence and a plastic creative basis on which it could work as an artisan uses for his production of forms and patterns, a dumb and obedient material. Very interesting what he's saying. This is it's a material form, it's a disguise, okay? And a presence also, a disguise of its presence. Whose presence? The consciousness and will. It is disguise, but it is also an interesting plastic creative basis. It's a plastic, it's a substance which I can mold. It's not like a stone rigid which I can't mold, but matter can be molded, okay? Plastic, and the word plastic is very interesting. Yesterday also we came across plasticity. Plasticity means something which can be molded, okay? So plastic creative basis on which it could work as an artisan uses for his production of forms and patterns, a dumb and obedient material. Note the word obedient material. Whatever you make it do, it will do. Okay, dumb. It doesn't. There is no expression of it. And obedient material. By the way, it's very interesting. When we were children, we used to have what is called plasticine. I don't know if you people have gone through that, but we could take that plasticine. It's like a rubber thing, but very, very plastic. And you can mold. You can make a boy, you can make a car, you can make whatever you want. We used to have that as children, plasticine. Okay. So that is exactly what matter is saying. You and I can't make much of it maybe, but we can now. We can make phones out of it. We can make TVs out of that material. We can make houses out of that material. We can do anything we want. Okay. So it is plastic. Clear? So the first veil is matter. Now we go to the next one. All these things we see around us are then the thoughts of an extra cosmic divinity. This is the theory I am discussing with you. So it is possible that since we see consciousness in matter, there must be someone who is very, very conscious and doing this. He is producing forms out of that which seems to be formless and inconscient. Okay, so all these things we see around us are then the thoughts of an extra cosmic divinity. Here also, you can also say that an artist is going to create a house, but first of all, it's a thought. Without the thought, he can't create. Okay, he creates a thought, a blueprint. He puts it down, and then it becomes a house. 3 stages. First, there's a thought in the mind. Then the plan. He puts it down on paper, but it's not at the house. It is halfway to the house. Then he makes a house. Okay. So this is exactly what the divine also is doing. First, he conceives in his mind. Then he executes the plan, and then it becomes a reality in the physical world. Okay. So. From those words, each one, if you give the right value to it, you will see that he repeats these ideas elsewhere also. Okay, so the thoughts of an extra cosmic. By the way, extra cosmic, that means the transcendent. He is outside the universe. Okay, a being with an omnipotent and omniscient mind and will. Again, he is repeating mind and will. Mind corresponds to consciousness. Will corresponds to force. Okay, he is using different words, but you must always associate these ideas together. Okay, but it's a mind with an M cap and a will with a W cap. Universal mind, universal will. And what is that? Full of power and full of knowledge. Okay, omnipotent and omniscient. But here slightly reverse the words. Omnipotent is coming first, but will is coming second. Omniscient mind. I think because he has to put omniscient mind together, so there is power as well as knowledge. Okay.
He wants to say omnipotent mind and omniscient will.
Yeah, omnipotent and omniscient mind and will, both are there together. Okay, but they can be also seen as separate. Who is responsible for the mathematical law of the physical universe? We see that there is a very interesting mathematical law. Okay, this is very interesting because in nature, all these things which are created, they follow mathematical laws. You know, there are very interesting things. if you take numbers, okay, there are sequences of numbers, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, there is a normal sequence. But if you go on doubling, there is another sequence. 1, 2, double 2, 4, 4, double 2, 8, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, it goes on. Nature follows these laws, okay. There is another one, which is, what is the name? I've forgotten the name of one of the mathematicians discovered this, and the shell formation in the sea, okay. You know, shells are there, okay. It follows this mathematical law. Fibonacci, that's it. Fibonacci sequence, okay. So the shell follows that law. Very interesting. So that's why Sridhar is saying, for the mathematical law of the physical universe, okay. For its artistry of beauty, it's not only mathematics but also beauty. For its strange play of sameness and variations. Sameness and variations, a cat will produce only cats. But in that also there are variations. So a plant also will produce the same mango tree will be 100,000 types of mango trees. Okay, sameness is there, and yet there is variation. Sameness corresponds to the fixity of law, and variations corresponds to the chance or the consciousness. Okay, of concordances and discords. Okay, there is both. There is harmony as well as a difference of opinion. Okay? Difference of opinion, not mental, but even vital, of combining and intermingling opposites for the drama of consciousness struggling to exist and asking to affirm itself in an inconscient universal order. Now that's a very interesting phrase. For the drama of consciousness struggling to exist. What happens to all living creatures? They are struggling to exist, but ultimately they don't exist. They die. Okay. This also he discusses in another chapter. For the drama of consciousness struggling to exist and seeking to affirm itself in an inconscient universal order. But at this level, they don't succeed. All life forms are bound to disappear. Okay? But something remains, and that's the psychic being or the spiritual element in man is not subject to death. But we don't know that as yet. Now, I go to the next sentence. The fact that this divinity is invisible to us, undiscoverable by our mind and senses, offers no difficulty. Somebody may object and say, you are saying there's a creator. I don't see him. Where is the creator? So they're saying that's not difficult at all to understand. Since self-evidence or direct sign of an extra-cosmic creator could not be expected in a cosmos which is void of his presence. Okay? You don't see the divine in the physical world. He is not there. He is extra-cosmic. Remember, he has started the hypothesis with extra-cosmic. He is not talking of the cosmic. That's very important distinction. Because if you think of God, all these theistic philosophies, he'll come to that. Okay, all theistic philosophies say that there is a God. Okay, he is a personal God, not the impersonal. So then you can't explain many things. He'll come to that. Okay, so you can't expect a God sitting outside the universe to be present in the universe. Okay, how can that be? So, which is void of his presence. I have made a note here of presence. Okay, that same thing which I told you earlier, just as one may see a sculpture in a museum, but the sculptor is nowhere to be seen. That's possible. So that's exactly what this theory we are discussing now, that's a theory. He is not discussing the theory of God in the cosmos, not yet. Okay, so which is void of his presence. The patent signals. The word patent means openly available to everybody. Okay, patent, from which when you make an invention, you patent it. That means others can't use without paying you. So that's a patent. Patent signal open, visible to everybody. Patent signals everywhere are the works of an intelligence. This we have seen. Okay, every animals also seem to have intelligence, but they follow laws. Migration of birds, okay, the plant, the creeper, which is climbing up, it needs to climb up, so it sends out tendrils, okay, and then when it feels the support, it winds itself at double the speed and goes up. There's intention in everything, okay. So patent signals everywhere the works of intelligence, of law, design, formula, adaptation of means to ends. Now that's very interesting. Adaptation of means to ends. You can see in the vegetable world, you can see a tremendous amount of adaptation of means to ends. All plants need water, but if you put too much water, then there is a problem. The plant will die, but not in the mangroves. It adjusts itself to it. The plant manages to survive even in extraordinary wet conditions. What about the dry conditions? There also it becomes a cactus in the desert. So this is the adaptation of means to ends. This is something very interesting also, that how things go on adapting themselves to ends. This is, you can discuss many things, that is very interesting also. See, man has been made by God in a particular way. He has made a nose for your smelling. Now, can that organ adapt itself to different functions? Okay. The answer is very clearly yes. There is an adaptation. That nose in man becomes the trunk of an elephant, which he uses as a hand. So it becomes a different function altogether. Okay. Take the nose of an anteater. He is using it as a mouth. So interesting. Take our ears. Okay. Adaptation and fantasy. That's what I'm discussing. Okay. Take the ears. Our ears are meant only for hearing. Can it be used for other things? Yes. In the elephant, it is used for cooling the blood. Okay. So many different things. Take our nails. Okay. Our nails protect the end of the finger. No? But can it become something else? Look at the talons of an eagle. It is used as a weapon. Okay. So many different types of things you can see. Okay. Take the toenails. Okay. Can the toenails become something else? Yes. They become the hooves of ungulates. Okay. So you have, it becomes a powerful weapon for running quickly on whatever. So there's different types of adaptations. You can give yourself 100 examples of this. We'll just discuss a few. Itself is also a very interesting subject which you can go on pursuing. Srirendra is only giving one phrase. You have to supply the examples to yourself. Okay. So I go back to the text. Adaptation of means to ends. Okay. Constant and inexhaustible invention. Okay. This also science admits. This is that there is a infinite mutation of cells and go on, different things are being created all the time. Invention. Not human invention, but divine invention. What about human invention? Even that is possible. We are going on inventing new things. Fantasy. Sometimes unbelievable things. Okay, one example of fantasy is very interesting. The birds, the feathers of a bird. Okay, look at the peacock. The peacock feathers are bigger than the bird itself. Fantastic, fantasy. If you think of that way, or you see some birds of paradise, okay? The tail is a long, 1 meter long tail with colors. What is the purpose? Fantasy. So this is what you can see. So many different types of things, okay? So, and even when restrained by an ordering reason, now he is ordering reason with an arcat, he is talking of the conscious being who is creating the universe. That was the theory we started with. Might be considered sufficient proof of this origin of things. So Chandra is very modestly saying, if you look at all these things, then my theory which I have started with, that consciousness, there is a being which is conscious and creating the universe, it is possible to believe. Might be considered sufficient proof for this origin of things. Okay, look at the language. Okay, very clear. He's just telling you, my theory is not absolutely nonsense. It can be considered quite logical. Okay, because if you see examples of all these things he has given, then you see that yes, it is possible. Or another theory. Or if this creator is not entirely supracosmic, but is also immanent in his works. Now, he is going to the next level. This God that I am talking about, this conscious being that I am talking of, is not standing only outside the universe, but he is there in the universe also. Okay, so he is there in the cosmos. Then what happens? or if this creator is not entirely supracosmic, but is also immanent in his works, the universe is his works. Okay? Even then, there need be no other sign of him, except indeed to some consciousness evolving in this inconscient world, but only when its evolution reached a point at which it could become aware of the indwelling presence. It's possible for consciousness to evolve from matter to life to animals to human beings, and even human beings into yogis. When you become a yogi, you can see the presence of the divine in the universe, but not before that. Okay? That's what he's saying in this context, but only when its evolution has reached a point. What is the point? A yogic consciousness, at which it will become aware of the indwelling presence. The intervention of this evolving consciousness would not be a difficulty, since there would be no contradiction of the basic nature of things in its appearance. An omnipotent mind could easily infuse something of itself into its creatures. Okay? Someone who is all-powerful, he can pass on some of his power to the others. That's possible, because he's omnipotent. Okay? One difficulty remains. Now, so you can see Srinath what he's doing. He's saying, let us start with the theory that force is one. Then he examines the process. But then you have a problem. How is consciousness coming out of inconscience? So now let's examine the other one. We go to consciousness. And that theory also, he's saying, he is examining the plus points, and he's saying all these things you see in the physical world. He has told you adaptation of means to ends and consciousness and all that. So it is very possible that my theory can be stand by itself. Now he is objecting to the theory. He is bringing the possibility. Difficulties also he is discussing. One difficulty remains. It is the arbitrary nature of the creation, the incomprehensibility of its purpose, the crude meaninglessness of the law of unnecessary ignorance, strife, and meaninglessness of its law of unnecessary. I misread. The crude meaninglessness of its law of unnecessary ignorance, strife, and suffering. Its ending without a denouement or issue. The word denouement is English here, but it's actually a French word. Nou means a knot. Okay, and there is no knot. There is no issue. This is a very interesting play. Interesting word he's using. He's saying that someone can object to my theory, and that theory is, you are saying there is consciousness, but if there is consciousness, there must be purpose. Can you think of consciousness without a purpose? Yes, it is possible, but it's not satisfying to the mind. Okay, so that's exactly what he's discussing here. Okay, all scientists, I go back to what Srinath is saying here. It can be possible. A scientist can say there is no purpose to the physical world. I see only a random mutation of cells, and I see all sorts of things being created, but I don't see any creator, I don't see any purpose in it. There doesn't seem to be any purpose. Okay? So this is the objection to the theory of a consciousness producing the world. Okay? Because if consciousness is there, there must be a purpose, but I don't see any purpose. This is what the scientists also say. Okay, there's no purpose. It's going on. Now, the answer could be a very interesting one, which we discussed yesterday. You could ask this person who is saying there's no purpose. Okay, I accept your theory that this is one possibility. But don't you think that there are two possibilities? I write a story which is absolutely random, going on without an end and without any purpose. Okay, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, go on. Or would you prefer a story which has got a plot and it's like a detective novel, okay? And there are many, many problems in the beginning. You don't know who has created the murder. And in the end, there's a climax and the solution is given to you. Which is more satisfactory? So obviously, it's a denouement. There's a climax, and that climax explains all the problems of the. So is that not more satisfying? You could say that. Okay. So although you can accept the scientific theory that there is no purpose in the world, there is a better explanation. It is much more satisfying to the aesthetic aspect of man and even the ethical aspect of man that there is a purpose to the universe. So we have to see whether the purpose is there. Okay, so that's what he's saying. So one difficulty remains is the arbitrary nature of the creation. So even those arguments are very, very involved, you have to be very, very careful. Okay, and he's first supporting the theory. It's not his theory. He's saying, I'm proposing a theory. Then we examine its positives and we examine its negatives. The negatives is this: where is the purpose? Consciousness must have purpose. So he's saying, could it be a play? He's saying, could it be in the universe? Can it be a play? But why this stamp of so many undivine elements and characters in this play of one whose nature must be supposed to be divine? If the consciousness is omnipotent and omniscient, he is divine. So why is he creating suffering? Why is he creating drama? Why is he creating all this pain? Okay, this doesn't seem to support your theory. That's what Sridhar is saying himself. Okay, then to the suggestion that what we see worked out in the world is the thoughts of God. Okay, my theory of consciousness is that first of all he has a thought and then he makes a blueprint and he creates it. So the materialist can answer, he can retort. Okay, the retort can be made that God could have had better thoughts and the best thought of all would have been to refrain from the creation of an unhappy and unintelligent universe. Why did God create the universe at all? And if he had to create it, why didn't he create happiness and beauty and purpose? He has created the opposite. So how can I accept God? Okay, this is the objection. Okay, to the theory that he himself is examining all theories one by one. Okay. Look at the irony also now. To the suggestion that what we see worked out in the world is the thoughts of God. He has spoken about that. No? The retort can be made. Retort means the counter argument can be made that God could well have had better thoughts and the best thought of all would have been to refrain from the creation of an unhappy and unintelligent universe. All theistic explanations, theistic, theos is a Latin word and it means God. Okay, so theistic religions, those religions which posit the existence of a personal God, not the impersonal aspect, the personal aspect. All theistic explanations of existence, starting from an extra cosmic deity, note, okay, there is a God, but he is standing outside the universe, extra cosmic, not in the universe, stumble over this difficulty and can only evade it. Okay, it would disappear only if the creator were, even though exceeding the creation, yet immanent in it, himself in some sort both the player and the play, an infinite, casting infinite possibilities into the form of an evolutionary cosmic order. This is a very interesting subject which we can discuss for a good deal of time, and he has answered this in the Delight of Existence the Problem, Delight of Existence the Solution. Why has divine created all this suffering and pain in the world? So he is standing outside. This is one question that Dilip Kumar Roy asked Sri Aurobindo. Okay, so I think it was Anatole France, I think, who had this. If God is omnipotent and omniscient, okay, why is he creating suffering? And if he has the power to remove suffering in the physical world, he is omnipotent. If he has the power to remove suffering in the world, why is he not doing it? So when he is capable of doing it and yet not doing it, he is perverse. Okay, this is the argument. Or if he is not capable of doing it, he is not omnipotent. So how can I accept God? This is the argument given. And Sri Aurobindo has a good deal of fun. He answers in a very interesting way also, but that's another subject altogether. So this is the normal argument given for non-existence of God in the world. Okay? If there is a God who is omnipotent and omniscient, he should not create a suffering in the world. So this question is discussed altogether. Now, Sri Aurobindo says that's a theistic explanation. But if it is not theistic and you say that there is a God who is outside the universe, but wait, he is also in the universe, then what happens? The problem changes entirely. Na? The problem is now God is creating suffering, but he himself is undergoing the suffering. The problem changes entirely. Okay, the problem changes entirely. Why is he enjoying his own suffering? Then he is not only a sadist, but he is also a masochist. That means he is enjoying other people's suffering, but he is also enjoying his own suffering. So, okay. So these are the arguments, and that whole solution is given at another level altogether. Okay. So that's the different chapter, 2 chapters. Delight of existence, the problem, delight of existence, the solution. It's a very interesting discussion, but we can't go into that right now. So then, so Swami is saying this problem that God is standing outside the universe and imposing his own suffering on others, this disappears, this problem disappears if you suppose that God is there in the universe also. Okay, so all theistic explanations of existence, starting from an extra cosmic deity, stumble over this difficulty and can only evade it. They can't answer it. Okay, it would disappear only if the Creator were, even though exceeding the creation, yet immanent in himself in some sort, both the player and the play, an infinite, casting infinite possibilities into the form of an evolutionary cosmic order. So this brings us to a very interesting thing. The divine is the author of the cosmos, but he is himself also the audience. He is himself also the player, the playwright, and also the player. Okay, and he is the audience also. Okay, so this is the interesting. There is a very interesting in the Gita which says that Brahmarpanam, the sacrifice is Brahma, the fire is Brahma, the offering is the Brahma, and everything is the Brahma. So you can say in this world, divine is creating a play. The play is the universe, and he is himself the playwright. He is the player, he is the actor, and he is also the audience. Okay? And he is also the critic. Everything is he only. So this is the, you can see how much you have to discuss to understand what he is saying. Okay? So this is what he is saying in the para, which we read yesterday. So the word denouement is now clear. Denouement is the climax offering a solution to the problem. So is that a better thing, or is this the other one? He is not saying that you are wrong. If you are limited to the mind, you can say that the physical world, there doesn't seem to be any explanation at all. But would it not be better if there were an explanation? If you are willing to accept that, let's examine that. That's what he is saying. He is very, very open. He is examining all the possibilities. Okay, so it's now 22. That means we have about 18 minutes about. Okay, so I'm doing one thing. We have discussed in detail. So sometimes we, as we say, we lose the woods for the trees. Okay? When you look all at each tree, you forget that it's a forest. So I'm summarizing to you what he's saying. Okay, an explanation can be there that there is an extra cosmic conscious mind that is creating the universe. That's a theory we are examining. Not seeing the creator is not a problem, as one would see a painting but no painter. Or even if the creator were in the cosmos, he could hide himself behind his creations, much like the director of a film. You see the film, you see the product, but you don't see the director. So it's a very similar in the universe also. You have no right to claim that I must see him, then only I'll believe him. You have to see the film, it is there. The film is the word. And the director you don't see. That doesn't say that the film is wrong. It's very, very real. Okay? He could hide himself behind several pains, the first of which could be matter, a material which hides the creator, yet is plastic enough to be molded into any shape. The second way would be life, and the third would be mind. But why create at all? Why should he create? For the joy of creation? Is that possible? But if it is creation of joy, where is the joy? We don't see in the word. Then why the pain and the suffering? This problem is insoluble if the creator is personal and extra cosmic. Okay? That's why Advaita says the divine is personal, but also he is impersonal. He is also extra cosmic, he is transcendent, but he is also cosmic and he is even individual. God is not only outside the universe, he is in the universe and even in the individual. Okay, so that's what he is saying in this para. One para, but there are so many different things that he is examining. So we have got about 10 minutes more. We can read the next one. No? If there are any questions, we will discuss it. Sometimes I feel I'm going too fast, but anyway, if you go back to the recording and see, if any questions arise, you can ask. Okay. Shall we read the next one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anmol, will you read?
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I will read. Thanks. On that hypothesis, there must be behind the action of material energy a secret involved consciousness, cosmic, infinite, building up through the action of that frontal energy, its means of an evolutionary manifestation, a creation out of itself in the boundless finite of the material universe. The apparent inconscience of the material energy would be an indispensable condition for the structure of the material world substance in which this consciousness intends to involve itself so that it may grow by evolution out of its apparent opposite. For without some such device, a complete involution would be impossible. If there is such a creation by the infinite out of itself, it must be manifestation in a material disguise of truth or powers of its own being. The forms or vehicles of these truths or powers would be the basic, general, or fundamental determinants we see in nature. The particular determinants, which otherwise are unaccountable variations that have emerged from the vague, general stuff in which they originate, would be the appropriate forms of vehicles of the possibilities that the truth or powers residing in these fundamentals bore within them. The principle of a free variation of possibilities natural to an infinite consciousness would be the explanation of the aspect of inconscient chance of which we are aware in the working of nature. Inconscient only in appearance, and so appearing because of the complete involution in matter, because of the veil with which the secret consciousness has disguised its presence. The principle of truth, real powers of the infinite, imperatively fulfilling themselves, would be the explanation of the opposite aspects of the mechanical necessity which we see in nature. Mechanical in appearance only and so appearing because of the same veil of inconscience. It would then be perfectly intelligible why the inconscient does its work with a constant principle of mathematical architecture, of design, of effective arrangement of numbers, of adaptation of means to ends, of inexhaustible device and invention. One might almost say a constant experimental skill and an automatism of purpose. The appearance of consciousness out of an apparent inconscience would also be no longer inexplicable.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what he is discussing the theory further. My theory, we have discussed the theory that conscious force is the creator of the world. But then you have a problem. How is force creating? How is inconscience creating consciousness? So let's examine the other one. Okay. We examine now the consciousness is creating. There also he has found some objections. If consciousness is creating the world, how is there suffering? How is there pain? How is there no purpose? That seems to deny the fact of consciousness. Okay, so that's what it is. But I think we have only 6 minutes left, 6 or 7 minutes left. So again, like yesterday, I will read out the summary of what he's saying in this one, and then we will look at the in detail into the next, because when you go into detail, Sri Aurobindo never goes into too many details, he only gives you the principle, and we have to supply the details for the principle that he is giving. Okay, that makes Sri Aurobindo's text very interesting. Okay, so now he is saying we'll examine this theory further. Okay, we then theorize that a consciousness and will has created the universe, but has hidden itself in it and intends to evolve out of its apparent opposite. This is a theory. Okay, so we go one step further. Yes, you don't see the creator, but he is intending to reveal himself slowly in evolution. That's what he's saying. Okay, then he goes on. Now he is introducing the idea of creation. Okay, the inconscience below and the consciousness above would be understandable with this theory. Okay, so that's what he's saying basically. That I take this theory I go one more step, that there is inconscience below, but there is a consciousness above, and there is a slow evolution going towards that. And proof of that evolution also is there, because you can see from matter has come out life, and from life has come out mind. Of course, you can object to this theory also, okay? Materialist would object. He would say, why are you supposing that life has come out of matter and mind has come out of, why not the possibility that all were created together? Where is the question of evolution? That also is possible. When you are at the material level, there's no end to discussion and no end to objections that can come. Okay? So far as you are stuck in the mental world, there can be no answer to fundamental questions. You have to go beyond the mind. Okay? So this is what he's saying, that there is my theory, I am advancing the theory, accept it if you want, okay? My theory is that there is a consciousness creating the world, but when it is creating the world, it is veiling itself. It is veiling itself. Therefore, the veil is complete at the lower end. There is total inconscience, seeming inconscience, and there is a slow evolution, okay? So this is the theory. I'll go into more details when I expound it further. And that's an Advaita theory, okay? In fact, Sridhar is going even beyond Advaita, because Advaita, the idea of evolution is there, but in a very veiled manner. It's not absolutely openly discussed. That became possible only when the biological evolution of theory came into, the biological theory of evolution came into existence. So now we can go into great detail, but it's applying the theory to consciousness and not biological forms. Okay, so we stop today, okay, and next time we will discuss this para. Okay, so what's the page? 317, no? So I'll just make a note.